open window. That is a very interesting chapter. As a chapter 5, you have enjoyed a lot. So this chapter, the open window, that is a also very interesting chapter. The main character of the chapter, that is a 12-year-old girl that is of your age, and she is very much active and smart. How does she make a false story and makes other people believe on her story? So this chapter is all about that. In this chapter, there is Mr. Frampton Nuttall. Frampton Nuttall, actually, basically, he is having some nervous disorder. Okay. And for that nerves disorder, for that disease, he needed complete bed rest. Doctor has advised him to take complete bed rest and he should not take any mental exertion, etc. Okay. So he was advised to settle in a country. But when he was preparing to leave his country, so at that time his sister gave him some letter of introduction and she recommended him some of the names. She knew those persons, and one of the address she gave, this address was of Mrs. Stapleton. Okay. So Frampton, he thought now he should go and meet that lady. So when Frampton, who was suffering with nerves disorder, he went to Mrs. Stapleton. So when he went into her house, he knew nobody there in her house. Okay. So Mrs. Stapleton, she was, give me this bottle. Give me this bottle. So Mrs. Stapleton, she was upstairs. Okay. And her niece Vera. Basically, whole of the plot which was constructed by, that was constructed by Mrs. Stapleton's niece Vera, who is of your age. Okay. And Frampton was not known to this fact that Mrs. Stapleton was married or she was widowed, which kind of lady she was. Okay. So young girl of your age, Vera, she decided to have fun with that person. See, Frampton already suffering with mental disorder. He went into the house of Mrs. Stapleton. Mrs. Stapleton, she was upstairs and her house was recommended by his sister, Frampton's sister. Okay. So when he went there, he did not know anybody there. When Vera came to know that this person doesn't know anything about them, so she started making a joke. So she framed a very false story. Okay. So what story was created by? What story was created by Vera of your age? She said that there was a great accident, there was a great mishap, and this mishap occurred near about 3 years ago. Okay. And she said that her aunt's husband with her 2 young brothers and along with the dog, they had gone for a day shooting through the window. Okay. And when they were going for the shooting in jungle, on the way, they sank into marshy ground and they died on the spot. They never returned. Even their dead bodies were also not found. So this was the false story made by Vera. So Vera was just cooking up her story. Okay. She said that poor aunt, what is her activity? She always stands near the window and this window is always kept open because she always looks outside. And to whom she waits? She waits for her husband or her 2 sons along with the dog. Okay. And she thinks that this hunting party, they would come back very soon. So that's why she's always in the search of her husband and 2 sons, and she always looks outside through the window. Okay. So what was her husband carrying when she went for a shooting? Her husband was carrying white waterproof coat, and youngest brother, they were in the habit of teasing her by singing, Bertie, why do you bound? So such kind of song brother used to sing. So Frampton, after listening that story, he got frightened. Just a minute. होगी कॉपी कंप्लीट होगी after completing you can submit and I will submit you in the office. It is allowed. So it is allowed while I'm teaching you and you are completing your notebook. You will be completing in principal ma'am's office by sitting on sofa after the school. Wait, you'll be completing there. By the time your parents come to pick you up, you will complete there. You will have a sufficient time to complete there. Yes, you will have a sufficient time. You will sit on sofa. Sharam nahi aa rahi mujhe. So when this cooked up story was told by Vera, so what was the condition of Frampton? He was completely frightened. He was scared. Okay. And he really felt relieved when Aunt Mrs. Stapleton, she came inside the room and she was very sure that the girl was entertaining the guest. Okay. So she added that the aunt was waiting for her husband and her, not sorry, by mistake, I have spoken two sons. It was her husband and two brothers, okay, to come home at any time, okay. And she also added up in that story when they would come, they would enter through the door, through the window, and definitely they would spoil the carpet. They would spoil the carpet with their muddy boots, okay. So Frampton, he was making an effort to turn the talk to some other fact, but she was telling, so he wanted to tell about his ailment, the nerves disorder, he was suffering with that problem. But when Frampton was, you can say, ready to tell about his ailment to Mrs. Stapleton, so she was not listening to that Frampton. She was looking through the window outside. Her husband has gone for shooting along with her two brothers, along with the dog. And they got late, so that's why she was looking outside and she was waiting for them. Actually, it happened. But cooked story was made by Vera that they were dead on the way. Now they have never come back. And this aunt, she has become a habit to look always through the window. So this was a Hanji story. हाँ, मैं बीच में रुक जाऊं? अजीब अजीब क्रिएचर्स है इस क्लास के अंदर. Your class is not less than a zoo. मैच पढ़ा रही हूँ क्या? But aunt's eyes were constantly on the open window and the lawn, and she was feeling so bored after listening to the Framptons talk about illness. When he was telling कि मुझे ये problem है, वो problem है, so she was getting bored. So she was looking outside. So suddenly she saw that the party was coming. Which party? Which team? Her husband, two brothers, and dog. She saw when the party was just coming in home. Okay. So Frampton also saw through the window that three people were coming. So when he saw those three people, he became so frightened. He, you can say that window was open Okay, three figures were walking towards, and they all were carrying guns. Okay, and one of the boy, he was singing song. Which song? Which Vera told, Bertie, why do you bow? So Frampton thought that these three figures were ghosts. These three figures were ghosts. So what did he do? He collected his hat, he took his stick, and he started running madly. Okay. So Vera's uncle, when he saw that stranger, he was running so fast outside and he was looking so unique. Okay. So Vera's uncle inquired about the stranger, that who was a stranger, who came out of her house and who was running like a mad person, who was that? So aunt described that it was Mr. Frampton. He was talking about his illness. He was telling about his disease, that he was suffering with different kind of diseases. He was also having mental disorder. Okay. So, but the way he was running, Nuttall has, Mr. Frampton might have seen a ghost. वैसे भाग रहा था जैसे ghost. Okay. So Vera said, no, no, no. Why, I just tell you why he was running, because he was afraid of dog. That's why he was running. Okay. But the poor fellow, he was so frightened that he had to spend his whole night in a grave. Okay, with his dog, with dogs crawling above him. That there were already so many dogs in the grave, and he had to spend their night. Okay. And Vera she was very much good at finding occasions for fun. It means that was her habit, to find out occasions for fun. Interesting story. Okay. Now we will start reading. Okay, Harman, you come. In between, I will be asking you questions.
My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall, said a very self-possessed young lady of 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. Frampton Nuttall endeavored to say something which should duly flatter the knees of the movement without unduly discounting the aunt that was to come. Privately, he doubted more than ever whether these formal visits of a succession of total strangers would do much towards helping the nerve cure which he was supposed to be undergoing. I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to this rural retreat. You will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from mopping. I shall just give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. Frampton wondered whether Miss Sepleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into the nice division. Do you know many of the people round here? Asked the niece when she judged that they had sufficient silent communion. Hardly a soul, said Frampton. My sister was staying here some 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt, pursued the self possessed young lady. Only her name and address admitted the caller. He was wondering whether Miss Sepleton was in the married or widowed state, as undefinable something about the room seemed to suggest masculine habitation. Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago, said the child. That would be since your sister's time. Her tragedy? Asked Frampton. Somehow, in this restful country, sport tragedies seem out of place. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said Denise, indicating a large French window that opened onto a lawn. It is quite warm for the time of the year, said Frampton. But has that window got anything to do with the tragedy? Out though through that window, 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her two young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. In crossing the moor to their favorite shooting ground, they were all three engulfed in a treacherous piece of bog. It had been that dreadful wet summer, and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. Here the child's voice lost its self-possessed note and became flutteringly human. Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday, and they are and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them and walk in at that window just as they used to do. That is why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dusk. Poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out, her husband, with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing Bertie. Why do you bound? As he always did to tease her because she said it got on her nerves. Do you know, sometimes on still, quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through that window.
From this reading, we have come to know that Frampton Nuttall, I have already told you that Frampton Nuttall, he was having problem of mental disorder. So he wanted to leave his country and he wanted to go to another place to have complete bed rest to avoid mental exertion. So when his sister came to know about this thing, so she recommended some letter of introduction. She gave him some of the letters that you can visit those places in order to change. So one of the letters she gave, that was of Mrs. Sapilton, house address she has given, and she told her brother to go and visit that place in order to be changed. Okay, so when he agreed and he wanted to go there, when he reached there, so Mrs. Appleton, husband, and her two brothers, along with dog, they have already gone for, you can say, shooting in one of the forest. Okay, and Vera was their young niece of your age of 12 years. So she was very much expert in making such kind of stories, and she really feels fun to make other person fool. So when she came to know that Mr. Frampton is a stranger here, he doesn't know anything around, anyone around there. So that's why she made a story that this person and that brothers, they have gone and they were going, and on the way they met with an accident and what is not found. And Mrs. Appleton, she has become crazy. She always looks outside. Okay, and one of the brother, he was always having the habit of singing that song, but she also added in this thing in her story that this boy always sings that song in order to tease her, because she is really fed up with the song, and here and such kind of false story was made up. Okay, rural retreat means safest place in the countryside. Okay, so when this story was told, so she was adding so many different kind of things in order to make Frampton afraid. So Frampton was listening. Okay, and but he was also surprised at how could this happen. So up to that chapter, there is a comprehension check. Why had Frampton Nuttall come to the rural retreat? Rural retreat means why he has come into a comfortable place. Rural retreat means safe place in the countryside. So why he has shifted there? What was the reason? Who will be telling me? इतना देखो, अब देखो, see the confidence level. Yes. To prevent his nerve cure. Yes. Cure this disease, and he could spend some of the time in peace also. So that's why he shifted there, because he wanted to spend some time in peace He wanted to relax. He wanted to stay aloof, stay separate. Okay, because he was suffering with one of the ailment. What was the name of that ailment? Mental disorder, nervous disorder. Why had his sister given him letters of introduction to people living there? क्यों उसकी सिस्टर ने लेटर ऑफ इंट्रोडक्शन दी उसको? Because when he was going to countryside, why letters of introduction was given?
So that he must know about the people of the.
See, when he would be going in that place, there'll be not so much crowd. He could get bored, isn't it? He could get bored. Okay, he would feel lonely. So that's why she has given him some letter of introduction so that he could know some of the people. He could meet them. Okay, one of the address which was given of, it was Mrs. Stapleton. One of the address which was given off was Mrs. Stapleton. So that's why, because she was living there in countryside, and Mr. Frampton Nuttall, he was going in countryside in order to spend some time. So he would be feeling lonely and bored there. So that's why sister suggested some letter of introduction so that Frampton could meet them and Frampton would keep his boredom and loneliness away. Clear? Am I clear with this? Why had happened? What had happened in Stapleton's family as narrated by the niece? Now you have to make that false stories. Only 2 students are raising their hands. Others are on bed rest. They are taking. They also should be sent to countryside. They are not behaving like normal student. They don't know even a simple answer. Okay, now I'm going to keep the camera on. You people will be called in front of the camera and you have to narrate the story. What had happened in Mrs. Stapleton family as narrated by the niece? It means you have to tell about the false story which was cooked up by Vera. So last girl, Jia, come. You tell me the cooked story of Vera. Hurry up. Tell me cooked story of Vera. Tell me the answer. The story of Vera.
Vera had seen the 3 ghosts in the open window. Her sister advised her letters.
आगे बोल लो.
What did Vera tell about those persons? Where have they gone? How many persons were there in the
3
story? Who were 3?
ghosts.
वो ghost थे. What story was told by Vera? What was the story which was told by Vera? What was that story? It was Mrs. Stapleton's husband, her brother. Where have they gone? They have gone for shooting along with the guns and a dog. So, बच्चे, rest of the story will be discussed tomorrow. Okay.